Hey, checking in with The Biggest Bluff by Maria Konnikova. The Biggest Bluff: How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win. Which we're doing chapters, is it 14 to 17, I believe. Where, no spoiler, it's in the title. She wins. She becomes, she wins the big tournament at the very end of this section. Her going through, talking about talking about other people's tells, but then also just kind of her own stuff. What are her tells? And she finds that she's getting triggered. That, for to use a trendy word, that people are able to push her buttons too easily, mostly by being sexist assholes to her, and calling her little girl or making passes at her, or just basically like, oh, you're a woman, so I'm gonna bluff you, or all that sort of stuff. And she actually gets her own coach, her a not a technical coach, but a another psychologist, one who is a psychologist, who is a also is a poker player as well, and a little bit bromy-eyed, the internal, this is your, you're afraid to kind of do stuff because you're afraid of future Maria's going to kick your ass for doing something. It's like you gotta tell her to calm down and all this sort of stuff. It's like, I whatever works, I guess, as they say. But yeah, so she goes into the tournament, and we kind of get taken through the stuff. I don't really care about how it works, and I just sort of let that kind of cascade over me. And she's written the book very smartly, so that you don't really have to know fucking, I think aces are good. And she wins, Um, and there's a little section on what kind of medications that various people use: caffeine pills, uppers, downers, um, you know, various things, melatonin, uh, you know, all the sort of stuff. But she goes in, and she takes us through the thing. There's an older gentleman who tries to do kind of aggressive older gentleman, kind of push people around thing. All the kind of the different characters, all kind of the mind game stuff that I would just fucking horribly, I would just hate this stuff. I mean, maybe it'd be good for me to, other than I have an obsessive personality and would end up losing all the money. She does have an interesting section where she goes into a tournament where you can kind of re-buy in again, and she finds she's done it 5 times, which is maybe a little much, and you kind of gets into this is where you get into you know exactly the dark side that kind of gambling can be for a lot of people. And it's interesting the number of gamblers they talk about who are super successful but then burned out, and also had bet all their money or spent all their money away, obsessive personality wise. So it's one of these things that can attract a certain kind of person to it, that it's this may not be the best, healthiest life choice for you. I'm still kind of as much as this is fascinating, it's definitely not a world I would ever go into, because I know enough about myself, other than I would just be a basket case over one little mind game push. I have trouble with Ja at Risk. She crushes me. I will bring that up in a review if I do a review of this book. So it's but she wins. And, she's like, well, I could, just end on this high note, be lifting the trophy high. But it's well, I need to kind of think about this. Is this just me flash in the pan winning? Have I learned anything? What's the fallout from this? And so we're going to have a final chapter where it's going to be more assessment, more thinking about it, because it's the win isn't really the thing. It's the how you play, what you've learned, all that sort of stuff, which is actually the big stuff. Though the title, how I learned to pay attention, master myself, and win, there's win in there. It is the last one, but it is also the final kind of one, and maybe the seller of the book. which is the other thing about this book. It's like, well, how does she get all these people to coach her? I mean, she's a New Yorker writer, so she's like probably top of her profession that way. I wonder what other books she's written. She makes a lot about her humble beginnings, but she does seem to be somebody who's been able to get all these people to do it. Like, she approaches somebody, she says, "Oh, sure, that sounds fun." It's like, there's a reason why you are getting this, because you would think that if anybody who's a gambler, not a gambler, a poker playing guru gets tons and tons of people who probably pester them. Why did they give their time to her? Is she great advertisement for them? There's all this stuff of like, it'd be interesting to look at how did this book get made, kind of thing, is something I'm interested in, which I might do as a little addendum, because I think I want to do a review of the book, and then I want to pull into that, and if I can find anything, I could add that to the review. So yeah, that is The Bggst Blff. Everything except, I think, the final chapter. All right, more videos later.